Have you ever felt like you are living in the same world as everyone else, yet experiencing it in a completely different way? Some people walk into a room and only see tables, chairs, lights, and a few familiar faces. But there are also people who step into the same room and immediately sense the atmosphere. They notice who is sad, who is tense, and who is trying to appear fine, even though they are not fine at all. If you are that kind of person, you may have asked yourself a very uncomfortable question. Why do I feel everything so intensely? Maybe you hear a simple sentence, but it keeps replaying in your mind all day. Maybe you see a stranger looking sad on the street and your mood becomes heavy as well. And sometimes, just a cold glance or a message that feels too short is enough to keep you thinking for hours. Meanwhile, the people around you seem completely unaffected. They say something simple like, "Do not think so much," or the more familiar line, "You are too sensitive." And if you hear that sentence often enough, you begin to doubt yourself. Am I too weak? Should I become a little colder? Is there something wrong with me? But here is something very few people say directly. Maybe the problem is not that you are too sensitive. Maybe the problem is that this world was not designed for people who feel deeply. Sensitive people often live with a kind of emotional radar that others simply do not have. They can read the atmosphere in a conversation. They notice the smallest change in someone's tone of voice. They see emotions that others may not even realize are there. It may sound like a gift, but sometimes it also feels like having to listen to music that no one else can turn off. And that is exactly why many sensitive people feel tired without understanding why. They carry emotions that are not even theirs. They think about things that others forgot long ago, and they live in a world where most people do not truly understand how their hearts work. But here is the interesting part. These struggles are not random. There are very clear psychological reasons behind them. And if you are a sensitive person, you may recognize yourself in every point that is about to be discussed. In the next few minutes, we will explore 9 silent struggles that almost only sensitive people truly understand. Some of them may make you nod immediately. Others may help you realize something about yourself that you have never been able to name before. So stay until the end of this video. And if at some point you suddenly think this is exactly me, remember one thing. You may not be as weak as you think. You may simply be feeling the world more deeply than most people. There is a rather uncomfortable question that many sensitive people tend to avoid. If you feel everything so deeply, why does your life often feel more exhausting than other people's does? This question is not meant to offend you, but it touches on a truth that very few people talk about. Sensitivity is not just the ability to feel the world more deeply. It also comes with silent struggles that outsiders almost never see. If you have ever felt different, the following things might make you nod immediately. The first struggle is that you feel everything too strongly. For many people, a sentence is just a sentence. But for a sensitive person, it is like a small stone thrown into a lake. The ripples spread far and wide. A mild criticism can replay in your mind all day. Not because you are weak, but because your brain processes emotional signals more deeply than usual. The second struggle is overthinking after social interactions. After leaving a conversation, others may forget about it within 5 minutes. But you do not. You remember every sentence you said. You analyze every reaction from the other person. Sometimes you wonder if you said something wrong. And sometimes you even imagine problems that never actually existed. The third struggle is emotional exhaustion. Sensitive people are like a radio, constantly tuned to the highest emotional frequency. They sense tension in a meeting room, sadness in someone's eyes, or discomfort in a casual conversation. The problem is that you do not just notice these emotions. You absorb them. After a day in crowded environments, you may feel drained without even knowing why. The fourth struggle is that you carry other people's emotions as if they were your own. When you see someone sad, you do not just observe the sadness. You feel it. This makes you an incredibly empathetic person. But it also means you sometimes carry emotional burdens that do not belong to you. The fifth struggle is the feeling of not belonging in this world. Modern society often praises strength, rational thinking, and the ability to remain unaffected by emotions. In that environment, sensitive people often feel too different. You may feel like you are living in a room where no one else can see what you see. The sixth struggle is that small things can affect you deeply. A cold look, a short reply to a message, an unusual silence, details that many people overlook, can stay in your mind for a long time. And sometimes you even blame yourself for it. You wonder why you cannot just be simpler. The seventh struggle is that you often put other people's needs before your own. Because you understand other people's emotions so clearly, you do not want to make anyone sad. You do not want to disappoint anyone. So you often agree to things that deep down you do not truly want. The eighth struggle is that setting personal boundaries becomes difficult. When someone asks for help, it is hard for you to say no. When someone shares their problems, you feel responsible for listening. Over time, this slowly drains your energy without you even realizing it. The ninth struggle is perhaps the hardest one to talk about. Sometimes your sensitivity makes you a target for people with bad intentions. Some people realize that you are easy to empathize with, easy to forgive, and quick to understand others, and they take advantage of that. This is a truth that many sensitive people do not want to admit. But this is also where things begin to change. Because once you recognize these struggles, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. Sensitivity is not a flaw in your personality. It only becomes a burden when you do not know how to protect your own energy. If you recognize yourself in what was just described, take a second and ask yourself an important question. What if the problem is not that you are too sensitive, but that you have not yet learned how to live with that sensitivity? In the next part, we will talk about something that most sensitive people were never taught: how to turn your sensitivity into strength instead of a burden. And if you have ever believed that your sensitive heart only makes life harder, you might be surprised by what comes next. There is a truth that many sensitive people do not want to hear, but need to hear. The problem is not that the world is too harsh with you. The problem is that you are trying to live like people who are not like you. You are trying to become less emotional, think less, care less, just to fit into a world that was never designed for deep hearts. And ironically, that effort is what exhausts you the most. Think about this for a moment. A sensitive person walks into a room and senses everything: the tension in the air, a sad look in someone's eyes, a sentence that sounds normal but carries a hint of discomfort. Meanwhile, most people simply do not notice. That does not make them stronger. It just means they notice less. So if you feel more than others, that is not a weakness. It is simply a different way of existing. But here is the part that few people tell you. Sensitivity only becomes a strength when you learn how to protect it. If you allow every emotion from other people to go straight into your heart, you will become exhausted. If you try to please everyone, you will lose yourself. Sensitive people do not need to become cold. They only need to learn a skill that many people were never taught. That skill is boundaries. Boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are the way you tell the world that your heart also deserves protection. You do not need to carry everyone else's sadness. You do not need to fix every problem. And you do not need to apologize for feeling deeply. The truth is that this world can sometimes be loud and rough, but sensitive people are the ones who bring subtlety to it. They are the ones who understand art, understand people, and understand the things others overlook. If you are one of them, do not try to become a less emotional version of yourself. Become a wiser version of yourself. If you recognize yourself in this video, do one simple thing right now. Subscribe to the channel and continue watching the next video. Because there is another psychological truth about sensitive people that very few talk about. And once you understand it, you will begin to see yourself in a completely different way.